My name is Udokan Wakocha from Awata in Anambra State, Nigeria. For 18 years, I served as what we called a spiritual calendar coordinator in a powerful coven that operated across the entire Southeast region. My specific assignment was to track the fasting patterns of Christians and coordinate attacks based on spiritual timing. I knew exactly which days were dangerous for us to attack and which days gave us maximum advantage. But Jesus Christ set me free, and now I expose everything I learned in darkness. Today, I am going to reveal something that will change your entire approach to fasting. I am going to tell you about the specific days that made certain Christians absolutely impossible to curse. When they fasted on these particular days, we marked their files in the spirit realm with a red warning that said, impossible to touch. And I want you to understand why these days carry such devastating power against the kingdom of darkness. If you have been fasting but feeling like your prayers are not breaking through, if you have been wondering why some Christians seem to have more spiritual authority than others, if you have experienced attacks that seem to come right after you finish fasting, or if you have felt like the enemy always knows when you are spiritually weakened, then this message is going to give you understanding that will transform your spiritual warfare forever. You see, in the spirit realm, time operates differently than in the natural world. There are specific windows when the gates of heaven are more accessible. There are particular days when demonic resistance is weakened, and there are certain combinations of timing and fasting that create what we called in the coven complete spiritual invincibility. The Christians who understood these patterns were the ones we could never touch. Before I reveal these 5 days, I need you to understand how seriously we tracked Christian fasting in the kingdom of darkness. In my coven alone, we had 7 full time monitors whose only job was to observe when believers fasted. We had charts, we had calendars, we had software programs that tracked patterns. When someone fasted consistently on certain days, their file was flagged for special attention. Not because we wanted to attack them, but because we wanted to avoid them. The coven leadership would actually redirect resources away from Christians who fasted strategically. They would say things like, let us not waste our energy on that one. She fasts on the dangerous days. We cannot touch her. Let us focus on Christians who fast randomly or who do not fast at all. This was strategic warfare. We understood that not all fasting is equal. The timing matters as much as the discipline. And I am about to show you exactly what we learned. Let me tell you about the 5 specific days that terrified us the most when Christians chose to fast on them. The first day is the 7th day of every month. In the kingdom of darkness, we understood something that most Christians have never been taught. The number 7 is not just symbolic in Scripture. It carries actual spiritual weight that operates like a frequency in the realm of the Spirit. When a Christian fasted on the 7th day of any month, something happened in the heavenly places that we could literally observe from our monitoring stations. I remember the first time I witnessed this phenomenon. It was in 2009, during my 3rd year of active service in the coven. We had been assigned to monitor a woman named Sister Patience from Onitsha. She was a simple trader in the market selling provisions from a small kiosk. Nothing special about her in the natural world. Her shop was barely larger than a closet. Her daily earnings were modest. She had no special education or connections. But our high priestess had identified her as a threat because her prayers were beginning to affect the businesses we had cursed in that market area. You see, we had established spiritual strongholds over that entire market section. We controlled which businesses succeeded and which failed. We determined who got customers and who was ignored. It was a lucrative operation that funded many of our activities. Sister Patience was disrupting everything simply by praying. Businesses we had cursed for years were suddenly prospering. Shop owners who had made covenants with us were reporting that they felt something breaking. Our hold over that market area was weakening, and the source had been traced to this ordinary woman with her small kiosk and her persistent prayers. We watched her for 3 weeks, straight documenting her patterns, looking for weakness. We noted when she woke up, when she prayed, when she fasted, what she ate, who she spoke to, what she read. We were building a complete profile so we could find the optimal time to attack. Then on the 7th of February, she began to fast. I was on monitoring duty that night, assigned to watch her until midnight. What I saw made me call an emergency meeting with my supervisor, waking him from his sleep, because I did not know how to process what I was witnessing. Sister Patience began her fast at midnight on the 6th, which meant she entered into the 7th day already in a state of consecration. As the sun rose on the 10th, I watched through spiritual projection as a pillar of light began to form around her house. This was not something we usually saw with ordinary fasting. I had monitored hundreds of Christians during their fast, and most of them produced only a mild spiritual glow that we could easily penetrate. But this pillar was different. It extended from her roof straight up into what appeared to be an opening in the second heaven. The color was not white, like normal prayer light. It was golden with threads of silver running through it, and it pulsed with a rhythm that seemed synchronized to something beyond our realm of perception. We tried to send spirits of distraction to make her break the fast early. I personally dispatched 3 different entities that had never failed me before. They could not get within 50 mem of her compound. It was as if they hit an invisible wall and bounced back, confused and weakened. We tried to manifest problems with her children to pull her out of prayer. We attempted to create a crisis at her kiosk. We even tried to give her husband a sudden illness that would require her attention. A barrier we could not identify blocked every assignment. Our spirits returned, reporting that they could not even locate her in the spiritual dimension. She had become invisible to demonic radar. By 30 Hodor that afternoon, our entire monitoring team had retreated to a safe distance because the spiritual radiation from her prayer was causing us physical pain, even while we observed through projection. My supervisor had never seen anything like it. He called in a senior priestess from Inugu who confirmed that Sister Patience had accidentally activated something ancient. The fast lasted only 24 hours. She ate dinner that evening and went about her normal life, completely unaware of what had happened in the spirit realm. But for the next 6 months, we could not touch her. Every curse we sent bounced back. Every monitoring spirit we assigned was immediately exposed and cast out. Sister Patience did not know what she had done. She simply felt led to fast on that particular day. But in the spirit realm, she had activated something powerful that our coven had only read about in ancient texts. I learned later from our advanced training sessions why this happened. The seventh day connects to the divine principle of completion and perfection established at creation. God created the world in 6 days and rested on the seventh. This was not because he was tired. It was because he was establishing a pattern that would govern spiritual reality forever. When a Christian fasts on the seventh day of any month with intentionality, they are aligning themselves with this heavenly pattern that predates the foundation of the earth. The frequency of seven disrupts demonic technology in ways that even our most senior witches could not fully explain. Our trainers called it the completion override because it overrides any incomplete or counterfeit work that demonic forces are trying to accomplish. There was another case that confirmed this principle even more dramatically. A pastor in Enugu named Pastor Emmanuel had been under severe financial attack for 2 years. His church, which once had 300 members, had dwindled to less than 100. We had assigned 7 different spirits of poverty to his ministry, and they were all succeeding beautifully. His church could barely pay rent. They had been evicted from 2 different buildings and were now meeting in a warehouse with no proper ventilation. His members kept losing their jobs in suspicious circumstances. Business owners in his congregation saw their customers mysteriously disappear. The church offerings had dropped by 70%, and Pastor Emmanuel himself had sold his car and moved his family to a smaller apartment just to survive. We were proud of this operation. It was being used as a training example for new recruits to show how consistent pressure over time could destroy even a legitimate ministry. We thought we had won. Then someone in his congregation, an elderly woman who had been fasting for decades, suggested they begin monthly corporate fasting on every seventh day. She did not explain why the seventh. She simply said she felt led to propose it. The first month, only 5 people participated. They gathered at the church early on the seventh and fasted together until sunset. We monitored the event and noticed a slight disturbance in our operations, but nothing serious. The second month, 15 people joined. The disturbance grew stronger. By the third month, the entire church of about 80 remaining members was fasting together on the seventh day of the month. What happened next caused a regional emergency meeting in our coven. I was in that meeting when our regional coordinator reported that we had lost all access to Pastor Emmanuel's ministry. Not reduced access, not weakened access, complete loss. Every spirit we had embedded there for 2 years was expelled in a single moment. Every curse we had placed was broken. The altars we had erected in the spiritual foundation of that building collapsed, and the 7 spirits of poverty we had assigned were all destroyed, which was something we did not even know was possible. Within 6 months, Pastor Emmanuel's church had tripled in size. They had enough money to build a new sanctuary with their own hands. 3 of our undercover agents who had infiltrated that congregation gave their lives to Christ because they could not withstand the spiritual atmosphere created by those monthly seventh-day fasts. They said it was like being in the presence of God, and they could no longer maintain their deception. This is what the enemy does not want you to know. The seventh day fast is not just about self discipline. It is not just about denying your flesh food for a day. It is a strategic spiritual weapon that disrupts demonic calendars and disconnects you from cycles of attack. When you fast on the seventh, you are accessing completion power that closes every incomplete work the enemy is trying to perform against you. Psalm 2:7:1 says, "The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the stronghold of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid?" When you fast on the seventh day, you activate this reality in a dimension that the enemy cannot counter. The Lord literally becomes your stronghold in a way that our forces could not penetrate. For your practical application, mark every seventh day of every month on your calendar right now. Begin your fast at midnight on the sixth day, if possible, so you enter the seventh already consecrated during this fast. Specifically pray for completion of spiritual breakthroughs that have been delayed. Declare that every demonic cycle in your life is disrupted by the power of seven. Announce that every incomplete work of darkness is candled. The second day that terrified us is the 21st day of every month. If the seventh day was powerful, the 21st day was absolutely catastrophic for our operations. 21 is 3 years and 7, which creates what our trainers called a triple completion frequency. It is the number 7 magnified by the divine number 3, representing the Trinity. Christians who fasted on this day did not just become difficult to attack, they became dangerous to us. They could actually damage our operations just by praying from a distance. Let me tell you about a businessman named Brother Chukwumeka from Aba. He had been our target for 8 years because his wealth was supposed to belong to our kingdom. Before he became a Christian, he had unknowingly benefited from a family covenant that his grandfather had made with marine spirits 3 generations earlier. His grandfather had gone to a river priestess in 1947 and exchanged his descendants' souls for business success. The covenant stated that every male in that lineage would prosper in business, but their souls would belong to the water spirits, and their prosperity would ultimately serve the kingdom of darkness. Brother Chukwueka's father had been a wealthy man who died mysteriously at 52. His uncle had been even wealthier and died at 53. The pattern was clear. The men in this family made money, but they died young and their wealth was eventually transferred to serve our purposes. When Brother Chukwa gave his life to Christ genuinely in 2003, the covenant should have transferred his wealth to another family member who was still in darkness. That was how these agreements worked. You cannot be prosperous under the covenant and also serve Christ. One must be cancelled. But Brother Chuka discovered the power of the 21st day fast completely by accident. He did not know anything about spiritual calendars or demonic covenants. He simply felt God leading him to fast for 21 days, starting on the first of the month and ending on the 21st. He did this to seek direction for his business during a difficult period. This meant his fast would conclude on the triple completion day, with all the accumulated power of 21 days of consecration being released at once. The first time he completed this pattern, something unusual happened in the spirit realm. During our monitoring of the monthly covenant review, we saw the chains connecting his bloodline to our kingdom physically snap. They did not just weaken, they did not just stretch, they snapped with a sound that echoed through our monitoring dimension. Our marine priestess was summoned to investigate what had happened. She came back shaken, which was unusual because she had served in darkness for over 40 years and was rarely disturbed by anything. She reported that a decree had been issued from what she called the highest courts regarding Brother Chukwuka's family line. The covenant was not just broken, it was declared as never having existed. The spiritual record of his grandfather's agreement had been erased. This had consequences beyond just Brother Chukcha. His cousins, who were still in darkness, began having trouble in their businesses. The wealth that had flowed through that demonic pipeline was now redirected. The covenant that had served us for 3 generations was gone, and we had no legal right to restore it. We tried everything to regain our claim. We sent representatives to negotiate in the spirit realm, offering new terms and new benefits. We attempted to establish fresh covenants with his living relatives who had not given their lives to Christ. We sent agents to his business associates trying to make agreements through them instead. Every attempt failed. Why? Because Brother Chukwuka had established a pattern of 21st day fasting that created what I can only describe as a protective dome around his entire bloodline. As long as he continued the pattern, no new covenant could be formed with anyone who shared his blood. Within 3 years, his business had expanded to 5 states in Nigeria. He had planted 3 churches in areas where we previously had strongholds. He was funding missionaries in 2 African countries, and we had to mark his file as permanently untouchable because every attack we sent was not just blocked, but returned to the sender with multiplied force. I also witnessed the opposite case, which taught me how carefully we tracked these patterns and how deliberately we exploited gaps. There was a powerful prayer warrior in Port Harcourt who had been destroying our operations in the oil industry for years. Her name was Sister Blessing, and she was feared throughout multiple covens because her prayers had caused the collapse of witchcraft networks that had operated for decades. We could not find any weakness in her spiritual armor. She prayed 3 times daily. She fasted twice weekly. She gave generously. She witnessed boldly. She walked in holiness that our monitoring spirits could not find fault with. Then one of our infiltrators, a woman who had joined her prayer group as a spy, noticed something. Sister Blessing never fasted on the 21st day of any month. She fasted on the 1st, sometimes the 15th, occasionally the 30th, but never the 21st. She did not avoid it deliberately. She simply had never been taught about its significance. Our strategists realized this was a gap in her otherwise impeccable spiritual coverage. They called it a window of vulnerability, a time when she would be powerful but not invincible. We waited for months planning an attack specifically for the 22nd day of October, right after the window of the 21st had passed without her fasting. The planning involved 3 covens coordinating their most powerful operatives. We knew we would only get one chance. If we failed, she would eventually learn about the 21st day and close the gap forever. The attack was devastating. It came in forms she did not expect. Her husband was involved in a suspicious car accident that took his life. Two of her children developed serious illnesses that doctors could not diagnose. Her ministry was scattered when her key intercessors began experiencing severe family problems simultaneously. Sister Blessing survived. She is still alive today, but only after she finally learned about the significance of the 21st day and began incorporating it into her fasting pattern. It took her 3 years to rebuild what we destroyed in 1 month. 3 years of grief, of fighting for her children's health, of regaining spiritual ground that had been lost. I tell you this not to condemn anyone, but to show you how strategically the enemy observes your patterns. They know which days you fast and which days you skip. They plan their attacks around your spiritual calendar. They wait for the gaps in your coverage. The 21st day fast closes a crucial gap that many believers leave open. First Chronicles 16c. 1 teaches, look to the Lord and his strength. Seek his face always. The 21st day is when seeking his face produces maximum breakthrough because it aligns with heavenly completion cycles multiplied by divine authority. For your practical step, plan a 21-day fast ending on the 21st of an important month. Perhaps the month of your birthday, perhaps the month of your wedding anniversary, perhaps a month when you are expecting a significant decision. If you cannot fast for 21 days consecutively, at minimum fast the day before and the day of the 21st. Those 2 days together activate the triple completion frequency. Now, I want to pause here and share something critically important with you. If you have been following what I am teaching and you want to go deeper into strategic spiritual warfare, I need to tell you about something called the 21-day breakthrough protocol. It is a complete system designed to identify and close every spiritual door in your life. It is 21 days of targeted prayers, 21 days of strategic declarations, 21 days of systematic deliverance from the 7 main assignments that were most commonly used against Christians when I was operating in darkness. This protocol was developed by believers who understand spiritual warfare at the deepest level, and I myself went through this protocol after my deliverance. It was part of my own healing process, learning how to recognize and close every door I had ever opened, both personally and on behalf of others. The link is in the description. Do not wait until January to start your breakthrough. The enemy is not waiting. Why should you? Now, let me continue with the third day that made Christians impossible to curse. The third day is the first day of every week, which is Sunday. I know what you are thinking. Everyone knows Sunday is the Lord's day. Christians go to church on Sunday. They worship on Sunday. This is basic information. But very few Christians understand what happens in the spirit realm when you fast on Sunday specifically. This was one of the most closely guarded secrets in our coven, because we did not want Christians to realize the weapon they were ignoring. Sunday fasting was so rare among our targets that when we encountered it, we immediately flagged that person for special observation and usually recommended against direct attack. We would monitor them, Yes, we would document their patterns. Yes, but we would rarely waste resources trying to attack someone who fasted on Sundays because the failure rate was nearly 100%. I remember a case that still haunts me when I think about how close we came to accomplishing a terrible assignment. There was a young woman named Sister Adzi in Nusuka who was about to be married. She was beautiful, educated, from a good Christian family. She had prayed for years for the right husband, and she believed she had finally found him. Unknown to her, her fiancé was one of our undercover agents, not just a sympathizer or a casual practitioner. He was a fully initiated member of our coven who had been sent specifically to marry her. The wedding was scheduled for December, and his assignment was to establish a covenant through marriage that would give us access to her family line for 7 generations. You see, Sister Adizi came from a lineage of powerful prayer warriors. Her grandmother had been responsible for the collapse of a significant witchcraft network in the 1960s. Her mother had continued that legacy. Addis herself was beginning to show signs of extraordinary spiritual gifting. Our leaders wanted to stop that bloodline before she could produce children who would continue the pattern. The plan was elegant in its cruelty. Our agent would marry her, conceive children with her, and then gradually draw the entire family into spiritual bondage through covenants hidden in seemingly innocent practices. By the time anyone realized what was happening, it would be too late. Everything was proceeding according to plan. The families had met. The introduction had been done. The wedding date was set. Our agent reported that he had successfully established emotional connection and that she trusted him completely. Then Sister Ade decided to fast every Sunday in the 3 months before her wedding. She said she wanted to seek God's blessing and direction for her marriage. She wanted to make sure she was making the right decision. She had no idea what she was actually doing in the spirit realm, but her simple act of consecration was about to destroy years of careful planning. On the first Sunday of her fast, our agent reported feeling slightly uncomfortable in her presence. He said he could not maintain eye contact as long as before. When she held his hand during prayer, he felt something like electricity that made him want to pull away. By the third Sunday, he could not look her in the eyes without experiencing sharp pains in his chest. Our medical team, which included herbalists who understood both natural and spiritual ailments, could find nothing wrong with him physically. The pain was entirely spiritual. By the sixth Sunday, the spirits that were assigned to operate through him began to manifest visibly whenever she prayed in his presence. She would pray simple prayers, thanking God for their upcoming marriage, and he would begin to sweat and tremble. She thought he was under demonic attack and kept praying more fervently for his deliverance, which only made things worse for our side. The wedding was cancelled when he fled the country 3 weeks before the scheduled date. He could not endure being near her anymore. He later told our council that remaining in her presence had become spiritually unbearable. It was like standing in fire. He said every moment with her felt like his soul was being burned from the inside. The Sunday fasting had activated a level of discernment in her that exposed every hidden thing. She could literally feel when something was not from God, and his presence triggered that alarm constantly. What our agent experienced as physical pain was actually the light in her reacting against the darkness in him. What we understood about Sunday fasting is this: Sunday is the day of resurrection. It is the day when death was defeated and Christ rose from the tomb. When a Christian fasts on Sunday, they are not just skipping meals. They are aligning themselves with resurrection power. And resurrection power does not just give life, it exposes everything that belongs to death. It brings hidden things into the light. It reveals what has been operating in darkness. There was also a church in Aweri that practiced corporate Sunday fasting that we studied extensively because we could not understand why our infiltration attempts kept failing. Every first Sunday of the month, the entire congregation would fast from midnight Saturday to sunset Sunday. They called it their resurrection fast, and they had been doing it for 7 years by the time we became aware of them. What they did not know was that every witch and wizard who tried to attend that church was exposed within 3 services. Not through dramatic prophetic revelation, not through some special discernment ministry, just through normal prayer and worship. The resurrection power activated by their fasting created an atmosphere where darkness simply could not hide. We sent 7 different infiltrators over 2 years. Each one was carefully prepared and had successfully infiltrated other churches without detection. All 7 were publicly exposed during those Sunday fasting services. The first one was exposed when he spontaneously confessed during altar call. He said he felt compelled to tell the truth and could not stop himself. The second began speaking in tongues, but the language that came out was not a heavenly language. It was demonic, and other members immediately recognized it. The third simply collapsed during worship and had to be carried out. After losing our 7th agent, our regional coordinator declared that church a no infiltration zone. We had to attack them only from outside because we could not get anyone to survive on the inside. Their Sunday fasting had made the entire building a death zone for demonic assignment. Colossians 3:1 says, "Since then you have been raised with Christ. Set your hearts on things above, where Christ is seated at the right hand of God." Sunday fasting activates this raising with Christ in a practical and powerful dimension. Do not just watch this video and move on. Participate. I want you to write in the comments which day you are committing to fast on this month. Write the specific date. When you declare it publicly, you create accountability that strengthens your resolve, and your comment might be the exact encouragement that someone else needs to begin their own fasting journey. Tell me which day you choose. Your practical step for Sunday fasting is this: choose one Sunday per month for a complete fast. Begin at sunset on Saturday and end at sunset on Sunday, making it a full biblical day of consecration. During this fast, specifically pray for exposure of hidden enemies and discernment against deception. Ask God to reveal anything in your life that does not belong, whether it is a person, a relationship, an opportunity, or a thought pattern that has been operating in darkness. The 4th day is the last day of every month. This one surprised even me when I first learned about it during my advanced training in the Coven. The last day of the month is when we conducted our most important spiritual accounting. Every coven, every kingdom of darkness, every principality over every territory uses the end of the month to calculate their gains and plan the next month's attacks. Think about it from our perspective. We were running an operation that spanned multiple cities and involved thousands of targets. We needed systems to organize our work, just like any business does inventory at month end. We did spiritual inventory. How many curses were successfully deployed? How many failed? Which Christians became weaker? Which became stronger? Where should we concentrate resources next month? Who has become too dangerous to attack? It is when assignments are reviewed, promotions are given to operatives who performed well, and new targets are selected for the coming period. The last day of the month is a day of intense demonic activity in the spiritual realm. Though most Christians are completely unaware of it, when a Christian fasts on the last day of the month, they are inserting themselves into our planning session uninvited. They are disrupting our calculations, and they are establishing protection for the coming month before we can finalize our attacks. They are essentially getting ahead of us strategically. I was present at a regional meeting in 2015 when one of our senior witches reported a disturbing pattern she had been tracking. Her name was Priestess Akuna, and she had been in the kingdom of darkness for over 35 years. She specialized in generational curses and had been monitoring a particular family in Omaha for 3 generations. This family had always been under our control through a blood covenant made by their great-grandfather in 1923. For almost 100 years, we had managed that family like livestock. We determined who prospered and who struggled. We chose who lived long and who died young. We decided who would marry well and who would marry badly. But starting in 2010, the youngest son of the youngest son had begun fasting on the last day of every month. He was a young man named Emmanuel, not yet 30, and he had discovered this practice from an old book in a second-hand shop. He did not understand the full significance, but he was consistent. Every month without fail, he fasted on the last day. Priestess Akana reported that every assignment planned against that family in our monthly meetings was failing. Not just being resisted, but completely nullified before it could even begin. When she investigated through spiritual projection, she discovered that Emmanuel's end of month fasting was creating interference in our planning dimension. It was like static on a radio frequency. We could not get clear signals through. The council decided to increase the attack on Emmanuel specifically. They assigned 3 of our most powerful agents to destroy him. Priestess Akuna herself took charge of the operation. They sent spirits of madness, spirits of accident, and spirits of sudden death. All 3 were deployed on the 1st of January 2016, time to catch him immediately after his supposedly vulnerable period. But we had miscalculated terribly. His December 31st fast had not just protected him for a few days, it had created what Priestess Akuna called a seal of immunity over the entire coming month. The spirits we sent could not find him in the spiritual realm. It was as if he had become invisible to demonic radar for the first 30 days of the new year. By the time the seal weakened in late January, he had already completed his January 31st fast. which renewed the protection for another month. He had created an unbroken chain of coverage that we could not penetrate. Emmanuel maintained this pattern for 7 years before I left the coven. During that time, he became the first university graduate in his family's history. He started a successful business that now employs over 50 people. He married a godly woman who was also a prayer warrior. They had 3 children, and the generational covenant that had controlled his family for nearly 100 years was completely broken. Today, his entire extended family is experiencing freedom they never knew. Cousins who had struggled all their lives are suddenly prospering. Family members who had been sick are being healed. The curse is broken, and it started with one young man fasting on the last day of every month. I also saw the strategy fail catastrophically when someone abandoned this pattern after maintaining it for years. There was a prophetess in Calabar who had become famous across Nigeria for her accuracy in hearing from God. People traveled from other countries to receive prophetic words from her. What made her dangerous to us was not just her gift, but her discipline. She fasted every end of month without fail, rain or shine, busy or free. For 9 years, she maintained this pattern. For 9 years, she was untouchable. Then in 2018, she became overwhelmed with ministry expansion. Her church was growing rapidly. She was receiving invitations to speak at conferences across Africa. She began accepting more engagements than she could handle. And somewhere in that busy season, she began to skip her end of month fasts. At first, she said it was just 1 month because she was traveling, then another month because she was exhausted from ministry. Then she started telling her associates that her spiritual level was now mature enough to function without such rigid discipline. She said she had graduated from basic fasting requirements. Within 6 months, her prophecies began to have errors. Small errors at first, wrong dates, wrong names. People noticed but made excuses for her. Within a year, she was involved in a scandal involving financial mismanagement that was exposed publicly. Her board of directors discovered money had been diverted into accounts she could not explain. Within 2 years, her ministry had collapsed completely. The church that once held thousands now meets in a rented hall with fewer than 200 people. Her prophetic gift has not returned to its former accuracy. She is still saved, still serving God, but operating at a fraction of her former capacity. Here is the part that disturbs me. We did not even have to attack her aggressively. Once she stopped the end of month fasting, the natural consequence of losing that strategic protection did the work for us. The door she had kept closed for 9 years was now open, and accumulated attacks that had been waiting for entry all those years flooded in at once. There is a lesson here. Spiritual discipline that you maintain for years can be lost in months of neglect. The enemy is patient. He will wait for you to become careless. Lamentations 3:22 and 23 declare, "Because of the Lord's great love, we are not consumed, for his compassions never fail. They are new every morning." End of month fasting allows you to receive these new mercies with full activation. It positions you to enter each new month under fresh divine protection. For practical application, set an alarm on your phone right now for the last day of every month. Label it Spiritual Accounting Day. This should be a non negotiable fast regardless of what else is happening in your life. During this fast, specifically pray for nullification of any assignments planned against you for the coming month. Declare that every demonic calculation concerning your life is disrupted before it can be executed. Now, before I share the fifth and final day, I want to ask you to do something important. If this revelation is helping you understand spiritual warfare better than you did before, share this video with someone else who needs to hear these secrets. Many Christians are fasting, but they do not know about the strategic importance of timing. They are working hard spiritually, but not working smart. They are putting in effort, but not seeing results, because they are missing these windows of power. Your share could be the breakthrough that someone else has been praying for. The fifth day that made Christians impossible to curse is the day of their personal breakthrough anniversary. This was perhaps the most devastating pattern we encountered because it was so personalized that we could not develop generic strategies against it. When a Christian identified the specific date when God had done something significant in their life, and they fasted on that anniversary every year, they created an annual renewal of power that compounded over time. Each year built on the previous year, the protection became stronger with every anniversary observed. Let me tell you about Mama Grace from Asaba. In 1992, after years of bondage, she was delivered from a marine spirit that had controlled her family for 5 generations. Her grandmother had made a covenant with water spirits back in the 1890s, and every woman in that lineage had suffered specific afflictions: barrenness, stillbirths, daughters who died young, marriages that failed. Mama Grace's deliverance happened on the 15th of August after 3 days of intensive prayer at a deliverance ministry. The spirit that left her had manifested visibly, screaming about the covenant being broken and the bloodline being released. It was one of the most dramatic deliverances that ministry had ever witnessed. For the next 25 years, Mama Grace fasted every August 15th, celebrating what she called her freedom anniversary. She did not just treat it as a commemoration, she treated it as a renewal. Every year on that date, she would thank God for her deliverance, renounce any attempt by the enemy to restore the old covenant, and pray for continued protection over her lineage. I joined the coven in 2008, and one of the first cases I studied was Mama Grace. Our files on her went back decades, documenting our repeated failures to recapture her for the Marine Kingdom. What fascinated me as I studied her case was the pattern of our failures. Every year after her August 15th fast, our monitoring showed that her spiritual authority increased. It was not incremental growth like we saw with other Christians. It was exponential. She became measurably more powerful each year, and the rate of increase was accelerating. By 2010, she could not just resist our attacks, she could sense them being planned before they were launched. Our agents reported that she would sometimes announce in prayer meetings what our kingdom was planning before we had even finalized the plans. It was as if she had a window into our operations. By 2012, any witch or wizard who came within her geographic territory experienced spiritual interference. They would feel weakened. Their assignments would malfunction. Some reported having involuntary confessions where they found themselves telling secrets they intended to keep. By 2015, entire covens in the Asaba region reported unusual difficulties that were traced back to her prayer coverage. She had become so spiritually powerful that her influence extended miles beyond her physical location. Simply living in an area that she prayed for provided protection for everyone there, whether they knew it or not. Our analysis showed that her anniversary fasting had created what we called a compounding covenant with heaven. Each year's fast built on the previous year's deposit. After more than 20 years, she had accumulated so much spiritual capital that she operated at a level we rarely saw in ordinary believers. She had the spiritual authority of a senior prophet without any formal prophetic title. The strategy of anniversary fasting was so effective that our leadership eventually issued a directive to all covens. When we identified Christians who practiced this pattern, we were to prioritize attacking them early before they could build up years of compounded authority. The longer someone maintained anniversary fasting, the harder they became to attack. So, we tried to break the pattern early, but even this strategy had limited success because the anniversary fast also protected their memories of what God had done. We commonly deployed forgetfulness spirits against Christians to make them forget their testimonies, forget their breakthroughs, forget what God had done for them. When you forget what God did, you lose access to the faith that breakthrough produced. Anniversary fasters were immune to these forgetfulness spirits. Their memories of what God had done remained sharp and clear year after year because they rehearsed those memories annually during their fasts. They could not be made to doubt their deliverance because they renewed their certainty every single year. I also saw a young man named Brother Victor who applied this principle in a creative way that multiplied its effectiveness dramatically. He did not have a dramatic deliverance testimony like Mama Grace. He had grown up in a Christian home and given his life to Christ at a youth camp when he was 15. Nothing particularly unusual about his conversion story, but Brother Victor understood the principle of compound spiritual authority. He noted the exact date when he first truly surrendered his life to Christ. Not just raised his hand, but genuinely gave Jesus control. Every year on that date, he fasted and renewed his commitment. Then he noted the date when he received the gift of speaking in tongues. He added that to his anniversary calendar, fasted on that day annually as well. He noted when he was healed of a chronic skin condition that had plagued him since childhood. Another anniversary fast was added. He noted when he received a specific prophetic word about his calling. He noted when he got his first job. He noted when he met his wife. He noted when his first child was born safely after a complicated pregnancy. Within 5 years, Brother Victor had 4 separate anniversary fasts spread throughout the year. Each one reinforced the others. The compound effect was extraordinary. By the time we identified him as a threat and began strategic attacks, he had built such a complex network of spiritual protection that our assigned spirits could not find entry points. Every month of the year had some kind of coverage from a recent or upcoming anniversary fast. There was never a window of vulnerability long enough for us to exploit. Brother Victor eventually became a pastor and taught this principle to his congregation. That church is now one of the most spiritually fortified congregations in their region. They keep corporate anniversary records. The whole church fasts together on the anniversary of the church's founding. They celebrate healings, deliverances, financial breakthroughs, and answered prayers with annual fasts. They have created overlapping layers of protection that our kingdom has simply given up trying to penetrate. The anniversary fast principle works because it is based on remembrance, which is a major theme throughout Scripture. Deuteronomy 82 says, "Remember how the Lord your God led you all the way in the wilderness these 40 years. When you remember through fasting, you activate divine intervention for your present based on what God did in your past. Your testimony becomes a living weapon that grows stronger with time. For your practical step, right now, write down 3 to 5 significant dates when God moved in your life. The date you got saved, the date you were delivered from something, the date you were healed, the date you received an answer to prayer, the date of a significant blessing. Put these dates in your calendar as annual fasting days. During these fasts, specifically thank God for what He did and ask Him to multiply that breakthrough in new areas of your life. As you add new breakthroughs throughout the years, add new anniversary fasts to your calendar. Now, let me bring everything together for you so you can see the full picture. These 5 days are not magic formulas. They are not superstitions. They are strategic alignments with spiritual principles that operate in the heavenly realm, whether you know about them or not. The Christians who stumbled onto these patterns accidentally became untouchable. Imagine what could happen if you applied them intentionally with understanding. The seventh day of every month disrupts demonic cycles and connects you to divine completion power. The 21st day of every month creates triple completion frequency that shatters generational patterns and covenants. Sunday, fasting activates resurrection power that exposes hidden darkness and brings revelation. The last day of every month nullifies enemy planning and seals divine protection over the coming period. Your personal anniversary fasts compound spiritual authority year over year until you become a force that darkness cannot reckon with. When I was in the coven, the Christians we feared most were not the ones who fasted the longest or prayed the loudest. They were the ones who understood spiritual timing. They knew that fasting is not just about denying your flesh, it is about positioning yourself at specific moments when heavenly gates are wide open and demonic defenses are at their weakest. I remember attending a prayer conference in 2016 where our regional coordinator showed us a detailed map of Nigeria with red zones marked. These were areas where our operations had completely failed despite years of effort and significant resources invested. These were towns and neighborhoods where we could not establish strongholds, could not curse believers successfully, could not infiltrate churches, could not destroy marriages or finances. When our intelligence teams investigated what the common factor was in these red zones, they found that each one had at least one Christian or one church that practiced strategic calendar fasting consistently. One church in particular in Anambra State had developed a comprehensive system. They had designated specific members to participate in each of the 5 fasting patterns I have shared with you today. There was always someone in that congregation fasting on the 7th. There was always someone fasting on the 21st. Sundays were covered by rotating groups. The last day of every month had dedicated intercessors, and the church kept records of significant dates and observed them as corporate anniversaries. They called it their wall of fasting, and that wall had made their entire community a no-go zone for demonic activity. Property values in that area increased, businesses prospered, marriages became stronger, children thrived. The blessing was so visible that unbelievers were investigating what made that community different. Before I pray with you, I want to give you practical steps you can implement immediately starting today. First, get a physical calendar or open the calendar app on your phone. Mark every 7th day of the next 12 months. This is your foundation. Even if you implement nothing else from this teaching, the 7th-day fast alone will begin to shift things in your favor. Second, identify at least 4 important months this year and plan 21 day fasts ending on the 21st of each of those months. If you cannot fast for 21 days consecutively because of health or work constraints, at minimum, fast the day before and the day of the 21st. Third, choose one Sunday per month for your resurrection fast. Make it the same Sunday each month so it becomes an established habit that you do not have to think about. The first Sunday or the last Sunday of each month works well for most people. Fourth, set an alarm on your phone for the last day of every month, whether it is the 30th or the 31st. This should be your non-negotiable end-of-month spiritual accounting day that you observe regardless of what else is happening. Fifth, sit down this week and write out your personal breakthrough dates. At least 3, at least 5. If you can identify that many, put them in your calendar right now and begin observing them this year. If you want a complete system that integrates all of these principles into a structured 21-day protocol with specific prayers for each day and declarations that target the most common demonic assignments, check the link in the description for the 21-day breakthrough protocol. It will give you everything you need to walk in freedom. Now I want to pray with you. This is not a casual prayer. This is a prayer of activation that will seal what you have learned into your spirit and begin manifesting in your life. I want you to pray this with me out loud, wherever you are. If you are in a place where you cannot speak out loud, pray silently, but with full intensity in your heart. Say this with me. Father, in the mighty name of Jesus Christ of Nazareth, I thank you for the revelation you have given me today about strategic fasting days. I thank you that you are a God of times and seasons, and that you have designed specific windows for breakthrough. I receive this understanding into my spirit right now. I declare that from this day forward, I am no longer a random faster. I am a strategic spiritual warrior who understands divine timing. I am stepping into a level of warfare that the enemy cannot counter. I align myself with the 7th day of every month. I declare that divine completion is activated in my life. Every cycle of failure is disrupted. Every pattern of defeat is broken. Every demonic frequency that has been operating against me is jammed by the power of 7. I am connected to the completion frequency of heaven. I align myself with the 21st day of every month